sometimes tweens or teens or college students make changes to their appearance kind of to stand out and show their individuality. And other times they do it really to sort of fit in or be a part of the group.
To blend.
To blend or to be accepted, right?
Yeah.
We'd start with be curious about the change. What is, your child or teen's interest in, getting that third piercing? What is that about? And why is it important to them? So today, we are going to jump into a listener question right off the bat. I think it's a very, very common question that parents run into with teens and tweens. So here we go. My 13-year-old daughter wants to get a third ear piercing. I don't feel comfortable with her adding another hole to her ear at such a young age. I don't think it's appropriate. My 18-year-old son, however, is growing a beard, which I honestly don't really like either, and my daughter is very upset and says it's unfair that he can change his appearance in the ways that he wants to, and she cannot, right? Interesting point here. What do you think? And this was such a neat question. It wasn't like, tell me what to do or what should I say, but just like, what do you think?
Yeah.
And so I loved this question.
I'm also thinking, leave it to a 13-year-old or a younger sister to notice all the injustices.
Oh, 100%.
They're
right?
so astute at that age. They're like, this is not fair, or I've noticed this. I love that.
Right. No, I loved it too. And I think it's such an important theme of adolescence, like your individuality and how you present yourself and do you fit with the group? Like appearance is a big part of that.
A big part of it. And it's so funny. I was just on a college campus recently and noticed boys everywhere popping up with a mustache, and it just cracked me up. Like I was like, "Whoa, this is like
it must be like the new trend."
It was like the Anchorman kind of mustache. Yeah. I'm like, this is what's happening. And so like all these young men, 18 years old leaving home, like I'm just picturing their parents when they come home, for the summer with these giant mustaches on. I was, as an observer, I loved it because it's such a big part of adolescence is kind of changing your look or dyeing your hair, or just doing things to kind of feel like you're expressing yourself or you're expressing who you are or who you want to be.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's really interesting kind of developmentally to think about, because I think there are kind of stages of this a little bit, because sometimes tweens or teens or college students, make changes to their appearance kind of to stand out and show their individuality, like you were talking about. And other times they do it really to sort of fit in or be a part of the group.
To blend, to
blend or to be accepted, right?
Yeah.
And it's not necessarily one or the other, but I do think this 13-year-old girl probably places her in 7th grade, right? Middle school is a time when really people are, young people are kind of separating a bit and showing some independence from their parents, but really attempting to fit in with the social group, Mm-hmm. And this wasn't, my appearance, but I remember in middle school, like it was so important to have Guess jeans. And they were so expensive.
So that was the same on the West Coast.
So that was so important to have the Guess jeans.
Yes, the zipper.
Yeah, with the zipper. And then, I don't know why we did this. We wore 2 pairs of socks and we scrunched them down. Yes. 2 different colors.
And sometimes did you roll the zippered jeans? We did that too.
We rolled the jeans.
It was so painful to roll
the bangs.
Yes.
The bangs, the Aquanet up and down. So
I wanted those jeans so badly and they were so expensive.
I know. I finally got them.
Me too.
And I coveted them because I had to wait for them for so long.
Same.
But it was so in the middle school, so often it is about, being a part of things or, and I think we did a whole other podcast on, I forget even the specific of the topic, but it was about the fact that like teens, it's okay if they seem a little self-concerned about themselves.
Yeah.
And appearance is a big part of that, fitting in at that time.
But it is a challenge because we're talking about this kind of, and we're feeling very like, this is so precious. Like, I remember this, you remember that, our Guess jeans, right? I think, though, for parents, sometimes this can bring up a lot more questions and concerns, particularly when there are things that are a little less malleable or changeable, right? Like this mom is saying another hole, right? In an ear. I've had parents bring to me the question of tattoos or the earrings that stretch things out.
The ears.
Right? That, how do they help navigate these things, allowing for individual expression and wanting to be a part of something, but when they're fearful, like these are kind of permanent or you want to make a decision at 15, that you have to live with, like, where do I weigh in as a parent here?
And I think, Suzanne, what you're saying really highlights, our kind of theme of this podcast today. There is no one answer, because the answer is going to be relevant, to your culture and your family and the age of your child. We just wanted to, in receiving this question, highlight some things that parents can think about in terms of how they respond to their, child or teen about this. And I think step one really harkens back to our podcast from last week, because whatever the issue is, right, whether it's something that's a bit more permanent or something, I don't know, like coloring your hair that's maybe more adaptable and change backable, we'd start with be curious about the change. What is, your child or teen's interest in, getting that third piercing? What is that about? And, why is it important to them? Right? Try to understand, because I think sometimes we in our anxious minds as parents can say, oh my gosh, if she gets the third piercing at 13, then she might regret that and might not want that, or might that hurt her in some ways. I've heard these things, might an employer not want to hire someone with 3 piercings, and she's making this decision at 13, right? But those are our worries, and that's our agenda. What's your child's agenda? And really trying to receive that non-judgmentally, because it genuinely may be the agenda is to fit in with the group of girls who all are getting their third piercing, right? And that doesn't mean you have to do it, but it's just to understand where she's coming from.
And I think that's sometimes the worry or the trap we might fall into as parents is, well, if I'm, empathic or understanding, or I listen, or I open up myself to curiosity and hear, and then say no, isn't that worse or kind of more mean? That like I find out my daughter just wants to fit in with her group of friends, and then I say no to it. I don't think so.
No.
I think it is how you approach it. And you might openly say, my decision still might be no, or I won't support you in that, or I won't pay for it. But I really want to understand why this is so important to you, or why you're interested in it. Can you help me understand?
You're honoring who your daughter is if you're having that conversation. And you're also, even if you stay firm that in this moment in time, this isn't happening, if that's your family's choice based on your culture and your decisions and your reasons, your child or teen feels heard, and it may also give you a different perspective moving forward in thinking about this, because I do think maybe if this isn't happening at 13, down the line, if this is still important for those reasons, maybe it's possible that you might shift, or it's possible that you might validate where your child or teen is coming from, and maybe even problem solve it in a different way. So let's get to kind of 3 things that we think are helpful for parents to think about when these sorts of things come up, right? Whether it be a tattoo, a piercing, coloring your hair, just changing your appearance in a way that you weren't ready for, getting a mustache, as Suzanne threw out there. First, I think, is age. How old is this, person bringing this to you? And because even though both, how old was the young man?
I think he was 18, wasn't he?
So, even though both 18-year-olds and 13-year-olds are still in a broad process of brain development that goes on until their mid-20s, it is true that 18-year-olds do have a little bit of a more mature prefrontal cortex, right? And what that means is they're going to tend to be a little less impulsive in their decision-making. They might have a little more sense of their own identity development and why they're making this choice. Or wanting to make this choice. And they do tend to, by 18, have a better sort of long-term planning skills, on average, than most 13-year-olds.
Yes, in general, right? Because certainly there are parents who say, my 18-year-old, I think, really is more developmentally 14 or 15. So you have to know and really be thoughtful about your own child development, versus some 18-year-olds might feel like, wow, they're really more like a 22-year-old in how they approach the world.
Right. But in terms of their decision-making, that is different. It doesn't mean one is wrong or right or better or worse. It doesn't mean that you as the parent have to control one or the other, because you can't anyway, entirely. But it's something to keep in mind, because a younger teenager is more likely to prioritize sort of immediate gratification, maybe a little impulsive decision, or just fitting in with the norms of the social group, which again is not necessarily bad. It's just to understand that and be aware of that in your conceptualization, and maybe offering that 18-year-old who's maybe looking to make a change a little more respect in that. I think the change that this 18-year-old made is growing a beard, which I really don't think parents
pretty
can have
easy.
yeah,
On and off situation.
it's a pretty easy on and off situation. But also, I mean, I don't really think a mom's going to have much control over that. Is she going to run after it with a razor? I mean, that's not a good idea. We don't advise that. Just
No
in case
running
you're
with
thinking about
razors.
it. No running with razors. So think about the age of your child, the maturity level of your
Age,
child.
yep, and decision making.
Right. And then number two, I think let's look at and consider, both in your own mind and with your child, kind of the permanence or changeability or impermanence of what kind of change in their appearance they're looking to make.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because it does seem maybe something, maybe a tattoo or, multiple piercings, maybe, certain piercings absolutely can close.
Yeah.
Maybe a little bit more permanent than something like dyeing your hair or growing a mustache.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
And that might affect how you think about it as a parent.
And bringing that up to your child or teen can actually be really helpful too. Of like, let's think about how this feels right now, that this feels like so exciting to get this tattoo, or this feels really important to you right now. Let's just think about, like, I don't know, 20 years from now, do you think that might, your soccer club that you're in right now might feel as important? Or could that be different? And then might you regret that a little bit?
I love that. And I think that could even just be formed and really just put on them to think about, like encouraging that self-reflection in them. What will you feel about this in a month, a year, and 5 years, right? 5 years maybe when you're not living at home anymore, when you're, a month from now, maybe if your friend group changes, and just thinking those things through so that they can be thoughtful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it helps build their decision-making problem sometimes, right? Because that's something we have to learn.
I recently, speaking of piercings, my husband, who is 54, recently came to me and thanked me for helping him think through getting a piercing, which, if, our extended family members listening, he really wanted to get this piercing. He would have been, I don't know, maybe 34, 35 at the time.
Oh my gosh.
And he had this hankering to just get one earring. And just knowing him, it was surprising to me.
Okay.
And so we had lots of conversation. And I just kept going back to, like, are you, and I'll be honest, I wasn't loving the idea. It was his choice.
It's very diplomatic.
I'm
I
outing
wasn't
myself.
loving it.
I wasn't loving this idea. It didn't fit the mold. But again, it's his presentation of self. It's his, I'm not telling him.
He's saying to the world how he wants to feel.
He's not telling me, what color to dye my hair. I'm not telling him what clothes to wear. So it was absolutely his choice, but I was not loving the choice. But I really slowed him down and had an extended conversation about this. And literally within the last year, he thanked me for that. He said, you know what? I wouldn't want that now. Now, an earring you just take out. So that would, that wouldn't have been such a big thing. But that's interesting because it's even an adult. And this is now, 20 years later. So, yeah.
Sometimes we all need a little help. Sometimes
we do.
Okay, so we have age and decision making, the idea of like more permanent, less permanent as something to help consider.
Right. And I think a final thing that doesn't apply to many of them, but sometimes it is safety, right? So, sometimes, young people go and get a tattoo at a place that, isn't entirely up to health standards, right? Mm-hmm. Or there may be a piercing certain places that it isn't really hygienic or isn't managed in the best way. And I'm not at all, going out against tattoo parlors. In an interesting turn of events, when my daughter got her second piercing, we went to a tattoo artist because they were known, this one particular one was known to be the best. So just for a simple earring, I went to her because she was known to be the best.
Oh, yeah.
In
That's
the
how
area.
I got my belly button pierced when I was a teenager, when my parents expressed desire for me to not do that. And one of their concerns.
I swear to God, this was my topic this week. What do you tell us more, Suzanne?
Yes. I had this exact thing play out with my parents, who grew up in much more traditional kind of Irish Catholic.
We could have led with this,
enclaves.
Suzanne. What are you talking about?
Oh, this could be a letter from my parents. I wasn't 13. I think I was somewhere around like 16 years old.
Okay.
And they really expressed a lot of negative thoughts and feelings about me doing it. But I was growing up in a very different environment. Las Vegas, as we've revealed before, and many people had tattoos and piercings. Many friends of mine actually pierced things themselves. And my parents were aware of it. So they were really concerned about it. And so I made some very thoughtful decisions around it and decided that I was not in agreement with them. I felt like it was not permanent. And so I went with my friends to a very reputable tattoo parlor.
Against their wishes. Did they say you can't do this? Like, this is a no?
Probably.
I think that's yes.
Yeah.
Suzanne's parents, let's review. We now know that Suzanne's parents did not want her to get a belly button piercing.
Correct.
And Suzanne then went with some friends, and where did you go and what happened?
We went to a really cool tattoo parlor in Las Vegas, but was very reputable and known for doing a good job with piercing. So I really was thoughtful about their concerns. They talked me through some things that led me to do some problem solving, again, on my own, and probably not necessarily what they would have still advised. Mm-hmm. But I did take it into account. And really, it was very well done. No infections. The people were incredibly respectful and kind. I had a great experience, and I was with friends, and it was really special because a few of us got pierced together.
For those of you who missed an earlier podcast, I forget which one this was, but we also learned that when Suzanne was in Vegas as a teenager, she went to a concert that she snuck out at the Huntridge that she wasn't allowed to go to. So we're learning a lot. But I'm
so sorry. This is like a personal,
I also want to highlight just, how parents can catastrophize choices that teens make against their wishes.
Yeah.
And then lo and behold, they end up, becoming a doctoral level psychologist who is a good, kind, and committed citizen of the world.
I deeply love and respect my parents.
Have a belly button piercing. What happened? What's the roundup to this story? Do you still have a belly button piercing?
No, I took it out during my first pregnancy because I thought that could get weird and probably unsafe. So I took it out then. But yeah, I had it from, 16 all the way till 29, 30 years old. And I loved it. I loved it for all those years. And I'll never forget when they found out my mom was upstairs and one of my sisters said something downstairs and I could hear my mom's voice. What did you do? And her and my dad came whoosh. And they were shocked, but then they kind of were like, all right, what's done is done. Are you cleaning it? Or are you and again, I hadn't, shared something so egregious. I was safe. I was fine. And it was just a joke. And then we let it go. And I had it for a long time. And then I took it out when I had to. And that was that.
And what this story highlights is I think we catastrophize things sometimes, right? If someone gets a tattoo, they get a tattoo. Of course, we can have our values around that. But we can't control it, right? Yeah. Suzanne, you were set on getting that, belly button piercing. She got the belly button piercing, right? And that wasn't the worst thing in the world, right?
No. And probably some of the ways in which my parents spoke with me about it allowed for me to think and process some ways to go about it that ultimately were helpful because I did go about it in a much safer way than perhaps I would have if they hadn't shared some of their concerns or brought some of those to my attention.
And I even heard you, when you tell the story, mention that you problem solved. You kind of thought through where to go and what to do. Mm-hmm. And that also is probably a credit to you, but a credit to your parents helping you think through, saying no to it, but helping you think through instead of just cutting you off. And,
No, you can't have that. I think it was here's why we're concerned about this. And I did think about those things. I'm sure to them, I acted like, you're crazy, you're ridiculous. But, that's often what we hear as parents, but that doesn't mean that there's not little nuggets and seeds being planted in our teens' heads that cause them to pause and think. Yeah.
Right.
You won't always get a lot of feedback that's positive, but keep trying.
So the things to keep in mind, that belly button piercing story came out in the context of safety, right? That's the final one that we should consider. So the age of our child, think about their sort of developmental readiness for whatever the appearance change is, how permanent or impermanent is, and any, impacts of that, really factually so, not just worry-based impacts of that. And then, any safety concerns. But I now think it would just be relevant to take a couple of minutes to think about kind of the how we have these conversations or how we approach this with our teenager. As always, Suzanne and I are coming from the standpoint of, keeping a lens of authoritative parenting, which is that, kind of warm and communicative, supportive parenting that's coupled with consistency and appropriate limits, right? And so, even sometimes if the limits are broken, as we just heard in that story, but coming with those limits allows your child to feel safe, your teenager to feel understood and respected, but also to know that there are certain expectations there. And that is the best way to approach most conversations, no matter what's coming at you.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah.
And so leading with curiosity, teasing apart what are your worries versus what are the real facts of the situation, right?
Yeah, sometimes I've worked with parents and getting them to think through, like, even if our initial reaction may be an absolute no, sometimes is this an opportunity for your child to have some autonomy or try something out that might be a little bit safer than potentially some of the other things they might be interested in. So sometimes we can kind of stretch this out and like think a little bit more about this beyond an immediate, no, I don't know anyone who does that, or other people might think that looks weird. Like that's where that curiosity of like, okay, hold on, let me just learn a little bit more about this.
And sometimes if teenagers are respected and given the opportunity within whatever limits are appropriate culturally or otherwise for you to make some independent choices or be a little more autonomous or take steps towards that, changing your appearance a little bit is a way to kind of, be individual and take a risk that might then inhibit other unnecessary risks. If things are always an automatic no, then things tend to get hidden, and sometimes teens may be more likely to rebel or do things without your knowledge at all. So there's something
And they
to
might
that.
anyway.
And they might anyway. But there's something to allowing for that individuality and that autonomy.
Yeah. And I think one of my other favorite strategies and throughout parenting is the option of delay. And talking to kids about like this, if it's not an absolute no, right? Like not something you are really concerned about or opposed to or think is dangerous for your child. You know what? I understand that you really are interested in this right now. Can we just hit pause on this and like give you a little bit more time to think about it and me more time to think about it? And if you're still really interested in, getting the tips of your hair dyed pink in a couple of months, let's revisit that together.
This was my exact approach to the second piercing with my daughter. It was not something on my radar at all, of interest even, but it was really important to her, and I chose that strategy. And I think I put it on a school year or something, and then 9 months later, she was like, I still really want this, and I still think this is really pretty. And you know what? She's right. And after we got that piercing, for a brief period of time, I sort of moved on from it. I sort of thought about getting a second piercing. I've never thought about that in my life. This was a couple of years ago, a few years back, 3 years ago, I don't know. And so it's interesting. Our kids kind of can expand us as well,
That will be the next episode of the Parenting Pair podcast. Is we're going to go live from a tattoo parlor where Annalise gets a second piercing, and much to my children's horror, I'm going to get that belly button pierced again.
Oh my God.
Just for old times'
That
sake.
would be amazing. Luigi, could you bring the cameras there? Okay.
So if any tattoo piercing experts are out there, reach out to the Parenting Pair. We've got a fun collaboration for you.
So I love delay. The other thing I would say is we don't have to be all or nothing. So even if we're not ready to say yes to something for any number of very reasonable reasons we may have with our teenager, it is okay to get creative and just be like, well, can we take a step towards this? Can you wear clip-on earrings for a period of time? Can you get a henna tattoo of the tattoo that you want? Henna tattoos, for those who don't know, are often done at Indian or Hindu weddings, and they're painted on, but they're not permanent. They last for a matter of weeks and go away. But could that be something fun to play with, just to see how it looks, to some degree? There's ways to get creative and allow steps towards things that if you're not fully ready for full enactment of it.
Yeah. I love this. And again, I know we say this a lot, but there is no one right answer. Even within a family, right? What might be right for one of your teens or children might be different from another. And so these are just kind of points for you to think about and consider as you work through some of these decisions or hear some of these things from your kids or teens.
Yeah, absolutely. And remember, a little bit of friction, a little bit of secretly getting a belly button ring really is probably a sign of just normal teenage development. And Mom, who wrote in this message, that 13-year-old kind of pushing your buttons, that's probably healthy too. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's our what's now, right?
That's our what now.
Friction. A little friction is
friction is actually a sign of healthy development.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it might even make you grow. All right.
All right. Well, if other people are out there searching or thinking about these kinds of things, and it would be a real gift of you to share one of these episodes or another episode with them. It can help other parents. If you also have a moment to rate and review, it really helps us kind of get the message out, because then we get recommended to other people who might be having or who might have the same question as this mom or something similar.
Yeah. So pass it along. And tune in next week.